I think the team's the Warriors. I can't believe I'm saying that. But from the little birdies that I've heard, as you know, I have little birdies. My information is usually correct. Guy by the name of Joe Lacob. You might have heard of him. 1,000 points of light. What was his thing? 1,000
light years ahead.
Light years ahead. Light years
Yes.
ahead, Joe. Pretty enchanted by the dynasty possibilities right now. And we could argue whether they're a dynasty already. I've made my case. Everyone got mad at me, but it's like 4 and 8 years, but you missed the playoffs in 2. You bottomed out. Like to me, a dynasty is sustainable excellence. Whatever. We can argue that another time. You bring Durant back, and now it's like, could we win the next 3 titles in a row? Now it's like we're in Russell's Celtics 60s Canadians territory. And the thing is, they have the best assets for a trade. They have the most that Brooklyn would be like, all right, that makes sense. And then from a Golden State standpoint, you could actually say they would improve. The question for me, Rob, either Draymond or Clay has to be in that trade, because for them, you can't trade Wiggins. Wiggins was your second best guy in the finals. He does all this defensive stuff. You can't lose that. You have to add KD. A, would they have the balls to trade Clay? And B, would they have the balls to trade Draymond? What do you think?
I think at this moment in time, neither would be the case. I would see them being more likely to trade Wiggins, even if he is maybe more indispensable in his own way to what they do. And some of it, I think, is just skill set stuff. Some of it is those guys are like local legends at this point.
Yeah.
And you have to be absolutely positive about what you're doing and have a lot of certainty in the steps you're making.
But sports fans are hypocrites, Rob. We know this.
We do. But we also just laid out the extensive case for why KD was so miserable in his final season in Golden State and how miserable that made everything around him.
He didn't like Kerr. He
did turn on Steve Kerr and basically
was like,
everybody else there.
He would go out of his way in press conferences to contradict what Steve Kerr's messaging was. Like Steve Kerr said something about like KD needs to get mad and take control and blah 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 blah. And they asked KD about it. He said, "I thought it was about joy. I thought it was about loving the game." Like he was doing the absolute most that last season. But to Rob's point about
that's like the shit Van does with the Ringer. I hate when he does that. Fucking passive aggressive. I'm kidding, Van. I love you.
To Rob's point, when he talks about people and their complexities and they're constantly growing and evolving, maybe being away from the Golden State situation has made the heart grow fonder for what he had over there. And maybe KD would change his mind. I would be so surprised if he was just like, let's run that whole thing back.
Yeah, but think how quick this. Yeah, well, here's one of the stranger things. So this is a little more birdie. See, I didn't get to talk about this stuff for 5 weeks. KD and Harden. This is what I heard. They don't talk after the trade. They basically go radio silent on each other. They run into each other. I think in
Travis
London.
Scott concert. Yep. Mm-hmm.
They hang out all weekend, and by the end of the weekend, KD is sniffing around on Philly. And there's a whole Philly thing that happens for 3 days where it's like everybody it's basically Harris and Maxey and whatever pick that up. It's not even close to being enough. No. But Harden and KD were back. But that's my point. It's like, given that we know the NBA is basically like, in 8th grade all-girls school where the friend groups just switch every 2 months. Is it inconceivable that he could just get back together with Golden State, that he could have one dinner with Steve Kerr at someplace in La Jolla where they hash out all their shit? Remember, this is the part with the KD. Everybody talks about how unhappy his last season was. And it was, to a lot of degrees. He has the big blowout with Draymond. He was fucking incredible in the playoffs before he got hurt. Do you remember that round and a half where we were like, oh my God, this guy is at a higher level than LeBron. This guy is now the best player in the league.
Yes.
That's the thing, though. That game he scored, and I keep bringing this up, that game he scored 50 points against the Clippers. I was at his post-game press conference, and he just snaps at Chris Haynes for no reason whatsoever. You just won the game.
That's un-American.
In which you dropped 50. And Chris Haynes asked him the most innocuous, regular, normal question after a game like that, and he just flips on the dude. And I'm just like, what a miserable cat. So, I wonder if he would want to go back and be in that headspace. But also, what I mentioned to Rob on our Ringer NBA show is that back in the days, KD had a reputation for being very fickle, very malleable, flip-floppy, whatever you want to call it. He had a reputation for that annoyed certain people. So maybe that'll be the case, and he'll change his mind all over again.
Rob, the king of new media, Draymond Green, which I always thought the king of new media was Jalen Rose, since he invented new media and was a player and media member, and then crossed immediately over to the media member and did all the same stuff Draymond's doing now. Whatever. Draymond's got a year left in his deal.
Yeah.
There was legitimate deteriorating offensive performance last year. He was a liability for them for chunks of the playoffs, and then I thought was brilliant in the last couple games, where it's like he summoned old school Draymond and was still able to do some of that veteran stuff. Like game 2, I thought some of the ways he punked the Celtics was really important for that series, and he talked about that after, I thought, pretty eloquently on JJ's pod. But in general, he's about to hit his mid-30s. He's got 1 year left on his deal. He's going to expect a lot of money. NBA history says, don't pay this next contract. This is not somebody that you can pay 30 plus million to when the arrow, at least offensively, is pointing way down. We don't know physically how he's going to evolve over the next couple of years. He's not a big guy. It's not like a center where you can, even though you lose a little bit, you still have your size. To me, I think he's the guy who's in that deal if they get KD, because you figure like, well, if we're not going to pay him a year from now, then now that he becomes the contract, now it's like him. You put Moses Moody in there, who I think is going to be really good. Kuminga's in there. Maybe Jordan Poole, some picks.
Wiseman.
Yeah, but maybe if you're trading Draymond, maybe you keep Wiseman. I don't know. Or maybe Wiseman's in it. I don't know. But my point is they could put together 90 cents in the dollar. But if you were them, Rob, would you feel comfortable giving Draymond that contract? And we'll take a break after this.
I think part of the issue with trading Draymond in general is his value is so much higher to the Warriors than almost anyone else.
Right.
That if you're the Nets, why would you do it? Like what does Draymond get you unless there's a third team involved? Like I think there's probably a handful of teams that could really use what Draymond offers. To the other teams, he's not that valuable. And it's just the particulars of his skill set. To your point about his offense, Golden State is probably the absolute best case offensive fit for him in terms of what he can do and who he accentuates. You replace Steph Curry with Seth Curry in Brooklyn, I don't know you're getting anything resembling the same kind of function.
What about him and
flow.
Simmons? You don't like the him and Simmons offensive fit?
Just handing it off to each other back and forth for 20
it's
seconds
just
at a time.
It's like an NFL offense. Yeah,
Absolutely
I think
incredible.
You're right. I think they would have to spin him or Simmons to a third team.
Yeah.
And, the Pistons make a lot of sense for him. He's a big Michigan dude. And if you're the Pistons and you got Cade and Jaden Ivey in back-to-back drafts, now you're thinking, oh, Draymond, now we have some toughness. Like you start having ideas.
I think Portland would make sense for Draymond too. Like they've been obsessed with him for a while.
Or how about the Lakers?
Sure. I just think with Draymond, he's so central to what they do in the sense that like they don't run out a bunch of Tatums and Browns and Time Lords and Marcus Smarts, the Warriors on defense. Like they're not running out gangbusters. Like they need him to be the linchpin of what they do defensively. And that whole thing just falls apart if Draymond's not a part of it.
So the three of us agree it's probably not Golden State. And I think that's the one team. It either has to be Golden State or Boston at this point. I don't think it's Boston. I think Boston's happy with their team. I don't think it's Golden State, but I do think the conversation that the three of us just had might have been a conversation people had with Joe Lacob at some point this summer, as he's like, but wait, what about KD? But I think KD ends up staying. I think they come to an uneasy truce. And then in December, who knows? Maybe it blows up.